Okay, hi everyone. Thank you so much for coming to our speaker series event on career guidance. Today we have Nandini and Harish as our speakers for this panel, so we can go ahead and get started. So, Nandini and Harish, would you guys like to introduce yourselves and your background?
I'll let you go first, Nandini.
Sure. Yeah. So my name's Nandini. I'm currently a software engineer at Microsoft, living in Seattle, but I grew up in Dallas, Texas. So I see some familiar faces in the audience. But yes, I studied computer science, and I'm kind of just like a fanatic of anything like
मोबाइल कहाँ
tech
चार्ज वेस्ट
related.
करता है.
And yeah, other than that, in my spare time, I like to play the flute and like do hikes and things like that.
Hi, everyone. My name is Harish. I grew up in New Jersey and I went to med school and then working as a resident right now. Um, I love playing tennis and hanging out with family and traveling. So, yeah.
Thank you. So we can start with our panel questions. So first question is, what inspired you both to choose your current career path?
Yeah, I can go first again. So it was kind of a combination of things. It's kind of like, I took a bunch of classes at school and like throughout high schools particularly. And I was like, what really resonated with me? I kind of knew, I liked problem solving, tackling problems. And I feel like generally the field of engineering is like very suited for that kind of things. But in particular, I kind of like started taking a bunch of courses. So like I did stuff in like psychology, biology, physics, math, and then computer science as well. And I realized like this is something that I like genuinely enjoy doing. And if it's, if I can make a career out of it, that's kind of like a dream come true.
Yeah, so when I was younger, I had an autoimmune condition with like plate that affected my platelets. So I went to the doctor very often. And so I was kind of just in the health system often. And I really liked, my doctor at least. And I also enjoyed biology and science in general. Growing up, I just wanted to know how things worked. And so knowing how the human body worked always fascinated me. So that's why I kind of went down this career path.
Thank you. And for our next question, looking back, what do you wish that you had known about your careers back in high school or in college that would have maybe helped you along your way?
Yeah, for me, I definitely think the concept of like earlier is better because I think there's times like, for example, when applying for jobs, I just wasn't particularly like sure or confident in what I wanted. And so I would kind of like postpone and say like, oh, maybe I'll start um taking a certain course or applying for classes or doing something when I'm sure of what I want. But the reality of it is like we're all dynamic people. So what we want may change down the line and we might not know necessarily like what's best for us at the moment. So kind of having that open mind and starting to explore early, whether that means like if you want to learn something like or pick up a hobby, just like starting that early or if you want to apply for a job, like starting interview prep early or learning that subject early, it just kind of gives you so much more opportunity and like time to really invest and explore. And so definitely looking back on that, especially when I was like trying to apply for internships, like since like tech is basically like everywhere. And so I would think like, oh, I don't really know where in tech I belong in, but I would say if I started like early and just like put myself out there, I um would have like been able to explore a ton of options. Obviously, I'm happy where I am now, but I definitely would advise that if I could like go back in time.
Yeah, so I think looking back, probably I would say the same things as Nandini actually. Starting earlier with whatever you're interested in and kind of honing on that just helps build your resume. And it's not really a resume thing, but more so like, you find something that you're passionate about that you build and you can talk about in, with medical school and just medicine in general. You're going to be going through so many different processes like college, medical school, residency. So having things to talk about that's outside of medicine is super important. And then like, just in general, I think really trying to figure out if this is what you want to do. I know it's very difficult because, everyone thinks you are helping people and that's why medicine is amazing. But there's more than one way of helping people, like, than just medicine. And so you have to kind of weigh the pros and cons of medicine, which is, do you want to give up your entire 20s? Do you want to, go through very tough times in medical school, waking up at 3 a.m., dealing with people who can be very mean and rough to you, and as a, going through the stages of, different parts of your career, any part of your career really. So it's difficult, but I think trying to learn more about the field itself by talking to different physicians and seeing if you can shadow them, and not even shadowing them. I think just talking to them really and seeing what they do, how their life is very important. In the sense that if you're not totally set in medicine and you feel like someone else is kind of trying to force you into that, you really weigh those things. I think those are all important. And then also just enjoying, your experiences, because this is a long road. And so, not thinking about, oh, when I get into med school, I'll be happy. When I get, become a doctor, I'll be happy. Like just enjoying high school, enjoying college, and being a kid and doing the things that you should be doing those times, balanced with doing well in school. I think those are all very important things.
Yeah, thank you. I definitely agree with you. And then for our next question, what does a typical day look like in each of your guys' roles?
Yeah, so as like a software engineer or data engineer, I think when I first joined, I was like, okay, it's going to be a lot like school. You kind of have tasks to do, which of course is part of it. And it's like you have a project, you work on the project, you code it, it works, great. And that is definitely part of my job. But I think a typical day is a lot more than just coding. It's actually really working with people all around you. And so working with your colleagues to figure out like how can we help each other, I'm working on something, they're working on something, like how can we best collaborate, or like other teams within the company saying like, I noticed you've done something similar before, like how can I learn from you? Or we want to be able to create a partnership and like kind of make our projects come together and be even better. So I think a typical day for me is partially coding, but a lot of collaboration, working with people, learning how you can best support others, kind of also having just at Microsoft, we like they hone on growth mindset a lot. So kind of just staying open to learning throughout the entire process, whether it's like learning from other people or just investing in your own learning to do a better job at work. So it's honestly a huge combination of like not just coding, but collaboration and teamwork and just having an open mindset.
So, and I think a typical day in my role is kind of difficult to answer because in medicine there's very different roles that a lot of depending on your specialty, a lot of different things you can do. But just the general internal medicine, typical day usually looks like, I get up at 5 a.m., drive to work, meet the residents usually by 6 in the morning, the night residents, so that, they usually go over anything that happened with our patients overnight, and then they usually leave, and we take over and, just I usually review some patient charts. And then go see all my patients and have everything kind of ready by 9 o'clock. just going through all their labs and everything. And then usually we meet with the attending, which is like the supervising doctor. And then sometimes we go and see some of the patients and talk about them. We talk about all the patients until like, about 12 or so, talk about, what the plan is for the day, what we're going to do, what medications will change, things like that, who we're going to reach out to, like if we're going to reach out to like, surgery, if we're going to reach out to, ENT, whatever. And then usually we get lunch and then I usually just sit at my computer from like 12 to 5, just writing notes, responding to nurse messages, following up on different tasks like calling, radiology, calling, other team members, like, calling the other specialties, like, if there's a question we need to get answered about, like, something with their GI system, I'm usually on the phone with the GI doc, talking about my patient, why we need their help. A lot of collaborating, honestly, with different people, including like case managers, trying to figure out how people are going to be discharged, how will people get certain medications, a lot of social work, honestly, and then like calling family members, updating them, and checking up on your patients, especially if they're sick. You got to go and see them, and like along the way, sometimes some nurses like, oh, this is happening. Like, can you come see my patient? Like, sometimes that happens, so you got to go see them. But a lot of it is writing notes, and notes are usually like, what happened that day, why the patient is in the hospital, writing like all their medications, anything we change, things like that. And then usually around 6:30 or around 7 o'clock, the night residents come back and we, give them updates, just quick updates, and then tell them if they need to do anything for our patients overnight. If not, we tell them nothing to do, and that's about it for the day. But that's internal medicine. The day can be completely different if you go into surgery. You're essentially same thing as I said, except you get up at like 3 a.m. for surgery and you stay probably later until like 8 or 9.
Long days.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then next question is, what were the biggest challenges you faced along your journey to where you are now in your careers?
Yeah, I think for me, it was definitely the idea of like imposter syndrome. So I think, and this is with like a lot of fields in general, when you're in just a competitive field, especially in STEM or honestly anywhere, it's like you're surrounded by talented people, which is amazing because you're able to like learn from the best, be surrounded by people who like can make you better, and you're working on like great things that'll actually like make a difference in the world, and all that's amazing. But sometimes, like I think, I notice this with my like friends and colleagues as well, is that it can be a double-edged sword. It's like you're surrounded by like super smart people, but then you start to compare yourself to these people and think like, oh, I don't know as much of them. I don't have as much experience. I don't come as from as prestigious of a college. So then imposter syndrome can kind of seep in and say like, I got here by luck. I don't know what I'm doing. Like, or this person seems to have it all put together. Like, I feel really lost and I'm asking a bunch of questions. And I think that was like definitely something that I was struggling with as well, is like just trusting that there's a reason I'm here. I've worked hard, like my whole life throughout school, college, and then I got the job for a reason. Obviously there's like people around me who clearly like believe in me, like think I'm like a capable engineer. And so just staying calm and realizing that it's normal to have imposter syndrome, it's normal to compare yourself. But at the end of the day, you worked hard to get where you are, and you're surrounded by people who want to see you succeed, who want to support you. No one's like, it's kind of like you have to get out of that like competition mindset. They're not like rooting for your downfall. They want you to succeed. So like anything that, maybe like you want to improve on, or like any weaknesses you have, like they're opportunities. They're not weaknesses. So just trying to like remind myself to just, like be easier on myself and remember that like it's normal to feel this way and not everyone's perfect, and just focus on how you can use the opportunity and like the people you're with to just like get better at what you're maybe like feeling a little insecure about and just trying to like focus on moving forward. It was definitely a challenge, but just like throughout parts of my career, but I think I definitely learned a lot and I needed to kind of overcome that to, be where I am now.
Yeah, so I think the biggest challenge really is, you know, trying to get into med school. I think, like from high school, I felt like a lot, like you just feel a lot of pressure to create the perfect, resume and get all the perfect scores and grades to kind of get into med school. So I think that it is difficult. But trying to get better at how you study is important. Learning how to get good grades in classes is important. Like knowing, like, how a professor grades, knowing, like, if it's multiple choice, like knowing how to take better, build your test taking skills, those types of things. And then, like I said earlier, trying to, find those extracurriculars that really help you stand out, but also that you feel passionate in because, no one wants to be doing stuff that they don't like all the time. So, finding those things is important. And yeah, it's just, trying to be disciplined. A lot of times you're going to have to give up hanging out with some of your friends and, give up certain, events because you want to study and, do well on an exam that's coming up tomorrow. And so having that discipline is important. But I think it's important that you do have you go through those things because it tells you, do I want to do this in the future? Because in the future, you're going to be missing birthdays, you're going to be missing, important life events, and because that's just how life is. On certain rotations that I was on, you have to be working 8 weeks straight, and you can't really have a day off unless it's like a super emergency, and then you also have to make sure someone else can cover you. So it's like essentially you just have to stay locked in. And so if you can't do that in high school and like, in college, then you should also think like, is it really worth it? Do I really want to do this? So those types of challenges are challenging but helpful, and it kind of helps make your decision, I think. So yeah.
Thank you. And then segueing into our next question. So, what skills outside of your academics helped you succeed in your career so far?
Yeah, I think they were kind of multifaceted. Like I think there was definitely a lot of like extracurricular things that I did, just for fun that actually ended up helping me in my career. Like I think, for example, one of them would be something like joining band or like I also did like Bharatanatyam, like growing up. At first I was like, oh, well, that's like fine arts. It's not going to be directly related to my career, but I think those really helped me like be or like prepare for my career in the sense that it taught me like discipline, diligence, what it means to be able to take up a really hard task, maybe something that you don't even want to do, or maybe something that um is just more tedious than you required and sticking through with it, putting in the hours, putting in the time, and realizing that, like whether it be building a hobby or building a career, these things are not a sprint, it's a marathon. And so kind of like teaching yourself like how to learn and how to kind of push yourself through the adversities. Like it's always going to be an up and down kind of pathway. So I think like that's a lot when I kind of learned by having like these extracurricular
Jobs for yellow classes,
activities
August
um,
30th.
that are
May
both
30th.
kind of like not directly related to academics. So that's one thing. And then I think the second thing that really helped out is just like I loved reading in general. And so, I read a variety of things. Like sometimes like fiction just for like pure fun reading, and sometimes it'll be nonfictions. Occasionally, I'll like skim like papers or like articles. But I think just developing that like habit of reading kind of kept me in this mindset of like be curious, have like like a curious mindset in the sense like I always want to be learning. I'm always like wondering, like what's going on with the world or what's a new perspective I can learn. And whether that is like reading a fiction book, but maybe it's talking about, like a different culture, a different kind of like point of view that I might have not considered before, learning from that, or like whether it be educational, like kind of like honing in on my soft skills and learning like, oh, what does interpersonal communication things mean like that. But I think like because I always loved reading as a kid, it kind of like translated into like this curiosity to keep learning about like different topics. And I realize like a lot of that ends up like applying into my career as well. So definitely really grateful for both of those things.
Sirish Vachakala.
Kind of the same, along the same lines as what Nandini said. I do agree with kind of, finding some hobby. For me, it was tennis, and it kind of helped me, build discipline, understand that practice makes things better, and just, overall the mental challenge of, tennis, which is like, when you're a lot of the times you might be like, playing from down, but you got to like work yourself back into the game and try to win. But then overall, I think like my people skills was something that really helped me outside of academics. I think in general, I think out in any field, people skills are super important. Whenever you're trying to get a job or having those connections can be super helpful, and working on those people skills from a young age is super important. I think for me, I started coaching tennis when I was in high school. That was like my first kind of job. I like put up flyers near my local tennis court, and people would call me, and I would like, go to the tennis court and, coach little kids. And I even coached some adults too. And like, just putting yourself out there and doing things like that kind of at a very young age, I think helped me build those people skills, which, you're going to need for the rest of your life, no matter what you go into. And, just being, challenging yourself. I know like we live in a very digital age, and calling people causes anxiety nowadays. So like, just working on those types of skills, I think, are super important. And overall, it'll also make you feel happier, just, being around people, talking to people, and people like you better as well. So definitely people skills.
Thank you. And then into our next question, how important is networking or mentorship in your career, and how have you applied that as well?
Yeah, I mean, super important. I think both mentorship and networking, they've brought me a huge way throughout just my entire life, starting from like, trying to make it through college to finding an internship to like even into my career. And so I think some like particularly notable like moments of like maybe mentorship in particular is like going throughout college and kind of like going back to the imposter syndrome, having someone who's able to mentor you and kind of like has been in your shoes is like really valuable because you're able to learn from their perspective, their experiences, and apply their learnings while as well as just like having a safe space and someone who you can look up to, who you can share your concerns and thoughts, and just having that kind of support makes a huge difference. And finding a mentor isn't always easy. I think like universities, they probably do or like a pretty decent job of matching you with people who, are amongst the same boat as you. But I think trying to find a mentor who you truly, I guess, like vibe with or really connect with, and also like being open to having like multiple mentors with different perspectives really can make a huge difference in your success. And in terms of networking, it kind of applies the same way where it's like having a network of people, whether that means like you met someone at a conference and you keep in touch, an old mentor in college that is working at a company you're interested in, maybe an old teammate, or like even within like the Sourashtra community, like other like aunties and uncles or like family members who have been in your field or like have similar experiences. These networks can help you in ways that you don't even realize in the long term. And so whether that means like the obvious one, it's like referrals or like finding like opportunities like, oh, there's an open position in my company, you'd be a great fit. Obviously, I feel like that's the like usual thing when people think of networking, but it's really more than that. It's like networking means like when you are running into a problem or like an issue and you kind of need support, you have a bunch of people who you've established a connection with, and because you've already established that connection, like you can easily reach out to them and vice versa. It's like, let's say you're like well developed in your career and you actually, are like a manager and you're hiring people. It's like that network goes both ways. It's like you have the opportunity to support people, they support you, and just having that bond is super valuable. And yeah, it's helped me a ton. In fact, like the latest role I got was because of one of my networks. And so it's really kind of important. And I liked how Harish mentioned, yeah, I feel like nowadays it's like pretty hard to just kind of put yourself out there and like talk to people and like actively pursue connections. Like I get it, I'm super shy as well, but like just like 5 minutes of your time, like, like making a personal connection with someone goes such a long way down the line. So yeah, super important in summary.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's always harder to say no to someone's face than it is through text and stuff. I remember like in like one of my like interviews with one of the professors, like she was saying like, if like I was talking about how it was difficult to get research in high school, talking to professors and stuff. She was like, just go to their office. It's going to be so much more difficult for them to say no. They'll have to give you a reason, and you can learn from that. But that always stuck with me. But I totally agree. I think networking and mentorship is super important in medicine. But the tricky part is it's very difficult in medicine. I think getting a doctor to speak with you is extremely difficult. I know how much I struggled when I was, in high school. I don't have any doctors in my family. I don't have anyone in the healthcare industry in my family. A lot of my, relatives who are doctors are like, maybe in India or something. And then a lot of them, I don't really know too many people here. So it's very difficult, I feel like. And that was I think a very difficult thing that I had to deal with because you don't get a good sense of what medicine is. Because I think I had a um, very like positive view of what medicine is. I'm forgetting, I'm like blanking on the word that I'm looking for right now, but uh it definitely is exactly not what you think it would be, like what people think. So I think finding a good mentor is very difficult but helpful if you can. I know one of the only doctors that I was able to shadow in high school was I met someone at the temple who told me about this doctor and gave me his number. It was a cardiologist, and I emailed him, and he was a very nice person that let me, shadow him, and not only shadow him, he kind of talked to me about what, being a doctor is like. It's difficult, I don't it's difficult for him to like really explain everything. I feel like even from those short experiences, it only, I think I felt like it gaslit what medicine was like. I was like, oh, this is amazing. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life. But he was trying to like, he did try to give me a more real life perspective of, the difficulty. Like he would tell me like even for like, like events for like, in his life, he would have to go to, family events. He would have to go in his own car if he's on call because he would have to go to the hospital if he gets called in. So those types of things I got little glimpses of, but I didn't really properly understand what medicine was like. So I'm very happy to give my number if anyone has, questions about what all of medicine is, because I know what we see when we shadow is the end point, which is great, and that's really what our whole career is. But I do think the decade or more leading up to it is very important as well. I think you are giving up your entire 20s to get to this point. So knowing what you sign up for is super important. And it, not only that, but the financial burden of this is astronomical. You're paying for college, you're paying for medical school. That's 8 years of tuition that's only getting higher and higher. So knowing all of what you're getting into is super important, and it's very difficult to find those things out because there's just nobody that's really, unless you have family members that are, are willing to help you out. It's very difficult to find some stranger that can help you. So I'm not a stranger to you guys. I'm happy to help. So I'll put my number on, and please text me, call me anytime. I'm happy to help.
Thank you. So now we'll move on to some more targeted questions towards each of our speakers. So I'll start with Nandini. So first question would be, what projects or experiences helped you stand out when applying for, I guess, your job at Microsoft?
Yeah. I think what really helped me was, and I got lucky. I kind of knew early on that like I just really liked working with data. So when I started like kind of defining my course load, picking electives within computer science, I kind of always honed in on like like data mining or big data or things that I knew would be kind of go feeding into a specialization. So that's one thing. It definitely helps if you know ahead of time like what you're interested in. So for me, I was interested in working with data, so I kind of course-wise divulged into everything data related. That was one thing. And then research is also a really cool opportunity for you to be able to build a bunch of like cool projects, learn new things that looks awesome on your resume and looks great to employers. So for example, I was um like I was really interested in like data mining and like data analysis, those kind of things as well. So I joined a kind like a lab within UT, so that's very into school, UT Austin, that basically what their goal was they wanted to take kind of social media data online, so like tweets or like thing posts on Facebook, and be able to build a model that can like analyze it. And since like when emergencies happen, so like hurricanes or tornadoes, like this was around like a lot of time, or like a lot of like storms around like Houston and things like that, where people needed help and they just weren't able to get help in time. And so they post on Facebook or on Twitter saying like help, like my like house is kind of like in shambles, or help, like we lost power, and like they just weren't getting that connection. And so it's like, okay, well, how can we use our like skills, like build ML models to automatically detect posts and connect them to the right people? And so that was a really rewarding project that I worked on, because it allowed me to take my like skills that I learned in school and apply it to a real life project that had impact, and kind of show that it's I kind of can make that connection of like taking something I learned and like bringing it into the real world. So that helped a ton, definitely, throughout like when I was applying for jobs. That was one thing. And then this is kind of like chicken or the egg response, but having internships or just any sort of like real life industry experience is amazing when applying, especially for a full-time job. Like the market nowadays is like crazy competitive, even more than like when I was applying. And so just having already things on like on your resume, whether that be like internships or working in research labs. It doesn't have to even have to be a project, like internships, research labs, or maybe like volunteering as a TA, things like that makes a huge difference because they just want to see that it's not just like memorizing and kind of like taking tests, building projects or whatnot, but like how do you handle the industry itself? Like how do you kind of like approach a business who uses tech? How do you think about those things? And so those like really make you stand out when you're applying for a job. And it also gives you a lot more to talk about, especially in like behavioral interviews. It's like, talk about a time you had to resolve a conflict or talk about a time where you had to deal with an ambiguous situation. And like the reality school just doesn't give you those kind of things that unfortunately that a lot of employers are looking for. So, just making sure that you're getting like real world experience makes a huge difference. And just in terms of projects, I would say like work on a project. It can be, there's like a lot of opportunities out there, but work on a project that you're actually passionate about. Like, don't do something that like you think will look good because then you won't care. You won't be able to talk about it with the same type of interest. Like, even if it's not as exciting, like maybe it's like building an app or like other types of engineering things. It's like, maybe you want to do something with robotics, like as long as you're passionate about it, that's really where projects can shine and like give you the opportunity to really stand out when it comes to, like finding a job. So it's a mix of many things, but yeah.
Thank you. And then for Harish, how did you prepare for the MCAT and med school applications?
So for MCAT, I mostly self-studied. Um, I did use this tutoring service. I forget the name of it, but it was kind of like a self-study thing. Um, and mostly I use like one of the Kaplan textbooks, the book sets from Cat. I just did a bunch of reviewing. For biochemistry, I actually didn't even take the course in college. I just self-studied it completely because a lot of the times you'll notice that college courses just don't go along with what the MCAT is. College courses are meant for the college course itself. So a lot of people have this like misconception that if they take, Chem 1, Chem 2, they're set for like the chemistry section in MCAT, but that's not true at all. And there's like little tricks, for example, like biochemistry, like, the college course might go very in depth into certain things, but like for the MCAT, you need to like have like the 12 amino acids like completely memorized. So like things like that, it's like you just have to like learn the tricks, I think, for the exact exam that you're taking. And a lot of the review books are very good at that. That's what they're for usually. So if you kind of do those like really well and then focus on doing the practice tests are uh through like usually the MCAT, whoever makes the MCAT, AMC, I think. If you get their resources and whatever resources the AMC gives, you got to do them, all of them, like from like, top to bottom. And if you do those, usually it kind of gives you a good idea of where you're standing, like how you're going to do on the exam. After those practice tests, kind of like doing one a little bit after doing all the studying and seeing, how you score. And then based off of that, if you're scoring a little bit lower on the chem section, kind of going through the chem stuff, things like that. And then for med school applications, I think preparation from that really begins from like day one of college. Doing getting a really good grades is super important. So I didn't really get a chance to talk about this before, but I think doing I don't really recommend doing biology or cell biology or like what everyone does it and when they're pre-med. I myself was kind of like that. And what I realized was doing something like history or business. I know it sounds stupid, but like doing those degrees might be better because at most colleges that's easier. And then you still have to take like the med school courses, like the pre-med courses, which are like 8 classes essentially, which you can really kind of do throughout your college. Like, if you take even one or two extra courses through the year, because you're going to have elective courses that you can take. And if you're doing something like business, your elective can be biology, bio one or bio two or organic chem. And doing those that way, you're doing something that's kind of like interesting outside of medicine, and it helps you for med school applications because you know other stuff, you are exposed to different things, and then also you get a better GPA. And obviously the big part is your science GPA does matter. That med schools look at that separately from the other, like your cumulative GPA. So just because you're taking all these easy other, like English classes and stuff like that, it doesn't mean that you can slack off on like your bio classes. That you still have to do really well in those classes. But like I think it's I think business is a great degree to do in college because, like, it exposes you to a different field. And if you choose not to do medicine, like, it also, like, prepares you pretty well. I know a lot of people think about biomed engineering. I think that's a very difficult engineering degree to do because engineering are usually very difficult and they count towards your science GPA. So you have to keep that in mind when you're doing stuff like that. So if you really are set on medicine, I think what I said is probably the best way to go about it. And then, like, just in terms of applications, I think like doing, like I said, like something that you're passionate about, so you can talk about it. For example, I ran like a mental health club in college. I did a little bit of EMT, like worked on an ambulance for a few years, and then like you have to do some hospital shadowing, hospital, like volunteering. It's kind of just essentially required, and then a little bit of shadowing too. All of those things kind of, I would say all come together with good grades and good MCAT score usually sets you up for any good medical school. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thank you. Um, due to sake of time, we'll go ahead and open up the audience Q&A. If anybody has any questions, feel free to unmute or put it in the chat. Oh, if nobody has questions, I have more questions. So I'll go. Um,
There's
so
a question in the chat, by the way.
oh, oh yeah, Nandini, did you want to expand on your answer by any chance?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I would say, well, at least for me, hands down internship, like research was like a super cool, like unique experience, but I did not like I do have my master's, but I kind of like always decided to go kind of down the industry route, not necessarily like the PhD route. So for me, industry or sorry, internships gave that like exposure to industry early on and like kind of exposed me to things like kind of like the business aspect of things or like the structure, teamwork that is just going to be very different in research. Not that I'm saying research isn't valuable, but I would definitely, if you had to prioritize, I would say internships.
And then Harish, a question for you. Was there anything specific you did in high school to explore the medical field?
I did actually I did EMT in high school as well. It was nice. I really liked that. And I also shadowed that doctor, the cardiologist I mentioned earlier in high school. Um, which was nice as well. I think doing a little bit of hospital volunteering is actually like not really. I mean, you can do it. It's good, to give back to the community and volunteer. But like, for example, when I was hospital volunteering, I was in the kitchen putting together like utensils and stuff. And so yeah, hospitals like, doing stuff like that or like, making me deliver random things throughout the hospital. So I, that's why I feel a little bit, weird about hospital volunteering because it's essentially just like free labor. But again, like, it's good to say, that you get to do community volunteering and stuff like that. But I do think if you're serious about doing something like, something like medicine, I think EMT is actually a very good thing you can do because you're actually riding on the ambulance, going and helping, on 911 calls, 911 calls, and like responding to them. Usually, most times it's like old people that like fell or like need to go to the hospital. That's usually what it is. But you do sometimes go to car accidents and things like that. Very. I think EMT is a good thing to try to do. You usually have to like try to see different towns have their own EMT programs, and you can kind of like message them or call them and see what they have for volunteering. I did it at Kendall Park, where I live, and I think they expanded pretty well. Like they have a huge like pipeline now for volunteering. So, yeah.
And
I
then
see
another
another.
question.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I just saw another question. So, medical schools, I applied to like a ton of them. I applied to like almost like 40 to 50 medical schools. I know the number keeps going up. Like nowadays, people are applying to more. Big thing about applying to med school is like knowing like where you stand, like what your grades are, and what your MCAT score is, and like looking on AAMC has like like this like website with all the schools averages and their like MCAT scores, and then like in-state schools versus out-of-state schools. Like some out-of-state schools don't even take like people that are out of state, or it's like maybe like 5% they take, so it's like essentially like no point in applying. And then like like trying to apply to schools that are in your range. If you have like, a really high MCAT and a really high GPA, some of the schools that have a lower average usually won't even give you an interview because they know you're probably going to get other places, so they probably won't even interview. So kind of like going through those and seeing what are the best fit for you, and then also choosing, where you want to be. I know for some people it's like anywhere is fine. So those things, and then
And
another thing is also uh, applying to DO schools as well. I think I didn't really get a chance to talk about that, but I think applying to DO schools are something that everyone should consider if they're planning to go into medical school. There's no such thing as going to only an MD school sets you up for success as a doctor. I think DO schools are essentially a different avenue to the same destination. Um, Although, albeit there are some difficulties in like residency matching for certain specialties like dermatology, neurosurgery. But if your goal is to, go into usually a non-surgical field, it's pretty okay. From DO schools are perfectly fine, and in practice, you cannot tell any difference. I worked with a ton of DO doctors, and like no one even knows it, no one talks about it, and it's like you're the patient's doctor. That's it. End of story. So I know some people would like to rather go to India or like the Caribbean to get an MD, and I would highly advise against that and try to apply to DO schools and like try for that before doing things like that. So that's something I just want to add. And then suggestions about USMLE exams. I think so. Advice on that, I think is like for everyone's career stage here. I don't know how many medical students we have on this call, so I don't know how helpful my advice will be for that. But they're definitely very difficult exams, and I think the best advice I have for those is like studying hard for the MCAT and learning how to take a long exam. The MCAT is 8 hours, so learning how to take an exam like that prepares you for the USMLE. USMLE is the same thing, like 8 to 9 hours. Like step three is like 8 hours for 2 days. So like it's just you get used to like testing like that. But I think if you work well in college, do well on your final exams, get used to like, working hard and studying long, whole semester for one final exam, you kind of get used to like what that's like for the USMLE.
Hi, I had a question for the both of you guys. I was just wondering if you guys had any roadblocks or any type of like career pivots, like if you guys wanted to like pursue something and then realize it wasn't the right path for you, and like what did you do to kind of change, or what did you do to overcome those roadblocks?
Yeah, I don't think I ever really like truly um pivoted. I mean, I'm still early in my career, who knows? But I know like when I was younger, I like briefly considered like medicine, and then like you guys heard Harish, like I don't think I'm cut out for that. And then luckily I ended up finding CS, but there's definitely been moments in my career where I've kind of had to weigh the pros and cons, and in the sense like I do kind of wonder like, oh, did I choose the right career path? How do I know if like I'm like truly happiest here, or if I would have been happiest doing somewhere else? Like, should I start over? Like, there's also always a lot of like what ifs, and curiosity, I guess, as to like, what I could have done if I chose a different path. Like, for example, in my like, so I work for like specifically, or I used to work for Office, like Microsoft Office growth. And so a lot of that was centered around, like, how can we get more subscribers? Like, how can we advertise this license, and then like, offer them a trial and then get them on premium, things like that. And a lot of it was centered around like, like marketing jargon and just like increasing sales. And that kind of like really threw me aback for a moment. But then I just kind of had to ask myself, like, like what makes me happy, and what out of my career kind of matches those needs, and like, are those satisfied? And if it's not, then like maybe it's time to start small, like find a different team, like find a different company, maybe even within the like for me, like within the space of tech, it's like, what if I pivot to like data science, or like product management, things like that is kind of like what I do if I'd say like no, like what my job offers and what truly makes me happy does not match. But in the case like for me, what I ended up realizing is that like um it was a matter of perspective. It's like, yes, like our team really cares about things like numbers, and like those numbers are kind of sales, and it puts like these people into like a bucket of like, we hit 50 million, now we're trying to go to 60 million. But at the end of the day, I thought like, well, what attracted me to this team in the first place? Like, what do I like about it? And it's about being able to help people. And like, if that means like helping 10 million more people kind of like be able to use Office and like benefit from all that the product has to offer, like that really speaks to me. So it was like I think over time it's like really trying to hone in on like what your perspective of your career is and like truly try to understand what you like and what you don't kind of just helps you bring some mental peace and confidence if you do end up pivoting.
Yeah, I think same thing here. Definitely, there's times where I've felt like, this path is difficult. I think I was a little bit too far in I mean, for me, I grew up wanting to do this, so I think it was difficult to ever imagine another, thing that I wanted to do. And that's a personal thing, not everyone has experiences where, they've been in the hospital a lot growing up. So like, if I hadn't had those experiences, I always think, what would I, how would I have felt? What would I have done? I think about my brother a lot because like, he's in that position right now. And I tried to give, the best advice based off of my experiences. Um, but I do think, it is a great field. At the end of the day, it is, there are times where, you're able to help people at their lowest, help people who are scared, who are worried, who no one goes to the hospital because they're having a great day. So knowing that, like, being there for them and, sometimes they're really, people can be really grateful. Um, there's also the other aspect where some people hate you and are thinking that, you're not helping them. And, you have to understand they're going through lots of pain and, things like that, where as a doctor, you might not be able to fix it. And, you're kind of just a cog in the wheel and you're trying to do what you need to do. So, there's a lot of those, but I think overall you do meet a lot of great people, and you really are you are really helping society. So yeah, so for me, there, like I said, studying and giving up events when you're young sucks. But I think that just prepares you for the future and kind of helps you figure out what do you want to do in life. In terms of medicine at least, because there are some specialties where you are expected to be present way more than other specialties. So that's why you kind of understand yourself better as you keep going.
Okay. So we reached the end of our time with our speakers today. So thank you so much for everyone for attending this panel. If you have any further questions, I believe both of our speakers have left their contact information in the chat. So feel free to reach out to them if you have any further questions. Nandini and Harish, thank you so much for giving us your advice and everything. It was super helpful and insightful to hear about. So thank you everyone for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having us.